So here we're back. It's day 3. The engine's in, everything's sorted out over there. But because it's a carb car, we have to now convert the wiring in the under the dashboard to an MPFI wiring. I think that's what we'll have to do. I'll have to check it out now. Basically, this is called an EZen. An EZen is one which uses an STEAM engine, and a BZen is one which uses a Baleno engine. And you have something else called an HZen. So what happened is, because these used to be so light, they're like 700 kgs or something like that, they used to shove in Honda engines, and those were crazy. So then you get even more power. But I guess the fabrication of that would be tough. Over here, the whole reason why this is a great one to do, the EZen, is because it's a direct fit. You just change it on the mounts and you're good. Well, the exhaust manifold cleared everything, so we put in the S-Team exhaust manifold. The Zen one didn't fit, the holes were different. What we did also was, we did have a difficulty with the alternator. What happens is it has a bolt below, and that bolt would be touching this chassis area. So what would happen is I wouldn't be able to remove the bolt anymore and remove the alternator. So what we had to do was shift it around to the other side, ruin the threading of the whole of the mounting arm on the other side, and put a nut and bolt. So this is running a nut and bolt on the bottom end, and it runs in from this end instead of from this end. So that the problem with that is when you lift the engine up, the alternator would be faulting with the brake booster and master cylinder. The next problem is the AC compressor. So the AC compressor would be touching over here. We actually shouldn't have removed it. It would have been fine, but actually we had to shift it from the Zen engine to this. That was the problem. Fitting the bolts back on some of these things is quite tough. So once you've done this maybe once or twice, you know how to do the procedure and which things to do first and last. When swapping the engines, we forgot to put the starter back in, and that was quite a problem, putting the starter back in with the engine in. Also, the back mount arm wasn't fitted, and that wasted another 1 hour, 1.5 hour. So we have wasted a lot of time. But ideally, if this was an MPFI Zen, we should have been done by day 2. It is day 3 now, and now I have to work on the wiring. The engine is fitted, that's fine. We changed all the fuel pipes to there is another problem that the Zen, I guess because this is a Zen carb, the fuel lines are thinner. So if I run normal fuel lines, I run normal return and normal so return lines are slightly smaller, and normal lines are slightly bigger. But if I run normal lines on this, they just slide off of the normal, as in the going flow pipes. So that is a problem. What you have to do is, I've shoved in return lines everywhere, and when a Zen MPFI is being scrapped, or a Tiger, we'll have to take the fuel lines out of that, take the fuel tank as well, and upgrade the fuel lines. So then all the hard lines are upgraded to the thicker spec. Then we can do things right. But at the moment, it's all running carb lining. That is a problem. So the ideal way of doing this would have been maybe sticking to carb. You would have been done quicker, or sticking to MPFI, and then the wiring was easier. And you would just have to maybe change the wiring on this end, just over here in the engine bay, and it would have been fine. But because we've gone from carb to MPFI, it's gotten more difficult. So that's added a day of complexity. And yeah, if you had a mechanic with you, this would have been done maybe in 1.5 day. But yeah, it's taken an extra day. We're also learning, so that's good. The gearbox end is sorted out. So you've got a gearbox mount over here, you've got an engine mount in the front, you've got another engine mount over here, and you've got another one on the other side of this cross member over here. So this is quite a well-held engine. And yeah, that's it. Now I'm just gonna have to put in the steam wiring. Hopefully this car starts today, if I get the time to do all of that. So I'll just be able to put a few hours and have a lot of other stuff in the workshop I have to do, like clean this damn place up, and I'm moving the cars into a different direction and maximizing my space. I haven't been great with my space management. Every few months I have to reshuffle the place, so that is a struggle for me. And because there are more cars here, I'm gonna have to shuffle the whole workshop and move stuff around. I'm just gonna have to put everything back together. We've changed the wiring on the engine, we've stripped out the interiors, as in, one sec, I'll show you guys that in a bit. So currently this is what the interiors look like. What we had to do is we had to take off the blower because some wiring was running under it over here. It was okay to take it off, but it kind of makes more sense to take off all this stuff. You basically have to almost strip out the whole car, and that makes it easier. It only happens because we've shifted from carb to MPFI. That's why this wiring has to probably change, and we'll only come to know in a bit. So we've taken out the wiring that was over here. One of the challenges was that the wiring fits between this pedal box and this part that holds the steering on the top. So the wiring ran over, one sec, see if I get some light. Okay, no light, but yeah, it ran over here and it was quite a tight spot. So we had to loosen this whole thing, drop the steering column. And that's why we ended up spending more time. A lot more time went into this. So that's the whole thing, you know, it takes a lot of time to do these extra things. And this is where another 2 days or 3 days might go, just figuring out the wiring, the whole mess. So you got a lot of stuff in the back. The old wiring, the new wiring, clusters that aren't the same. So now I'm gonna have to figure that out, and hopefully this thing will start up and we'll be able to take it for a round. And I will leave. I don't do any AC work. The AC work's gonna get done by somebody else. I think the procedure with this, get it running first, make sure the wiring's fine, get the basically the headlight relays working again, because it's running headlight relays. This has also got an amp in it, so that has to be done. First figure out the electricals. The electricals also run through the fenders, so everything has to be done first. Fix the electricals, then shift to getting the AC running, getting the cluster sorted, because right now you don't have an RPM on the Zen. You don't have an RPM meter, so I have to figure out how to make that work. Maybe I'm not sure if the wiring from the cluster, man, even the cluster wiring isn't here anymore. So hopefully there is something that works out here. Yeah, I'm confused, but I hope this works out. It would be easy if I just put in the S-Team cluster, but they're completely different sizes and shapes. Check this out. We've got this. That's the Zen one. And this is the S-Team one. So this is where the problem arises. They're completely different. Maybe I could have made a cover and made this work, but nobody's convinced that would work. So basically chop up the dash and make the S-Team one fit. That's what I would do, because that makes more sense and it's simpler. But nobody's convinced about that, so I'm gonna have to wait. What you may notice is this has more number of cables over here, and this has less. So you're gonna have more stuff like some other lights that are popping up. I don't know, check engine light, door open. I don't know what this stuff is, but it is there, and that's gonna be a difficulty if I'm gonna have to figure this out. So yeah, next up is wiring. It is gonna be a challenge, but a pro would be able to do this in no time. But this is a learning process, and if anyone's trying this at home, please try to start with an if you want to do this quickly, start with an MPFI car if possible. Or if you have a carb car, make sure that you have the running car next to you, the running MPFI, and make sure somebody else does this job for you. Just let them strip this out. Let them do this. This is a pain in the ass. Actually, taking out parts has taken 3 times as longer than putting the parts back. Because, for example, imagine this clip. This clip was annoying. It just got jammed up, and it just wouldn't come out. So we had to put some WD-40. We struggled for half an hour just getting this off, and that was a problem. So I think this is the thing. You need somebody to help you disconnect stuff, remove bolts, and you just be around. Get your mechanic, get some help, because it's not everyone's cup of tea. So yeah, let's see how today goes. I'll start with the wiring and getting things excuse me, worked out. You see the wiring there. Well, here we are back in the eZen. I've put in the wiring. So compared to the Zen, the S-Team had part of its wiring coming through this hole. This goes directly to the ECU. And I'm not sure where I'll be able to place the ECU because things are a bit short. Maybe I'll have to place it over here. And then the blower and all that fits over here. The Zen also didn't have much wiring running through these holes on both sides. What happened is we now have a wiring set for just this engine. One was for the engine bay, and that ran through the engine and went to the ECU. And we have another set of wiring that just goes through this whole under dash area, goes to the cluster, goes to the fuse box, and connects everything together. So this is the tough bit. I think this is why you have to stick to MPFI to MPFI conversions or carb to carb, and things work out much easier. You don't have these problems. This set of wiring also has an immobilizer, so things have to be done right. I might not be able to finish this. This isn't my cup of tea. I don't do wiring. I'm more of, I do fabrication. I weld myself. I mean, I don't weld myself. I do the welding myself, and I'm okay with mounting stuff and figuring out how things work, and mostly mechanical bits. But I just don't know wiring too well, and this might not be everything. I can't manage this whole project. This might not be what I can do, but I'll try my best. I think the problem is that I need to figure out if the fuel pump is clicking. The fuel pump has to come on. That's important. It has to prime once you just turn the key a bit. It has to stay on. You also will be obviously getting signals to the engine. The only problem is we might not be getting fuel. So that is the most important bit right now. I'll have to figure out the wiring and make sure that connects. The connectors don't match because one was MPFI, one was carb. There are some things that are extra and some that are less. As I earlier showed you guys, the clusters, this is the S-Team cluster, and the Zen cluster wouldn't work because it has less wires. So later on, this wiring harness has to be spliced into, basically you want to use the Zen cluster with the S-Team wiring. That's what we're going to have to do. But somebody's going to have to splice that in, match the wires. Hopefully the colors are the same. For some things, like for example, the indicator stock. This gives you the headlights, lets you indicate, gives you the wiper action, but the number of wires is identical. The color coding seems identical. So what I could do is I can chop off the wires from this and retain the S-Team wiring while I could retain the S-Team wiring while using the indicator stock from the Zen. But over here I have stuff like the ignition barrel. But what I've noticed is the ignition barrel, if you place it this way, it might not look the same. But if you turn it a bit, I might be able to just swap the wires from this, remove that screw that you can see over there, remove that screw, and swap these around. And maybe I can retain the wiring and the key of the Zen. Second of all, the wiring is a bit of a mess still. On the Zen, it runs through this hole. All the engine bay wiring, it just goes through here. And over there we have just a speaker wiring and I think something else. Indicator probably. No, the indicator runs the other way, I believe. The fender indicators. But this wiring, one runs through this end, goes to the, I think it goes to the AC, it goes to the headlight, and it goes to the indicators. Not much more. On this side, it goes all the way around, and I believe it comes back to the wipers and stuff like that. I'll have to check it out. So that side is a little longer. I also have to do a bit of wiring repair, and I will take this as far as I can. I hope I can crank. I hope it starts. That's the important bit. I haven't promised to start this car. I promised to fit the engine, but I don't know if it'll start. If it starts, that's great. and then that means I'm qualified to do a swap like this. But I would have been able to 100% do this job if both the cars were side by side, because then you can compare stuff, you know what fits where. That's the main problem. If both engines engine donor if the engine donor is running and it's at the side, and we just plonk it into this, copy the wiring, put it in, that's exactly what we would want to do. We wouldn't even copy the wiring. I could just pull it out from here, because now I have a problem over here. Sorry, a little light. So this wiring probably goes to the back, and this will be, I'm guessing this fat wire and something else would be going to the, what would you say? This would probably be going to the fuel pump, the tail lights, the indicators, all that. So I'll have to probably figure out the color code on this, lift the car, check what color those wires are, figure out what these wires mean, and somehow go back to the the S-Team, figure out what these wires mean, and plug these into that one. Because this just doesn't seem to match. This has more stuff. So somehow I have to figure out what it means. See this wire? A little fatter than it should be. So yeah, something has to be matched up. So I'll figure that out in a bit. Hopefully I can plug in some more sockets and make this thing work a little further. I'll also have to check pictures of the dashboard. Like, all these things must be from the AC. There is something that I can't understand, is that one connector isn't connected. But on the other Zen, on the other MPF I have, which is running an older S-Team engine, there are only 3 connectors. So maybe that it doesn't even connect. I'm not sure. I'll have to figure this out. Sometimes even some of these connectors, they match, they're identical. And that's what makes things tricky. So this will take a bit of time. Hopefully in the next clip, this thing starts and I can show you guys this whole car running. Then, what we'll do is we'll just have to get this thing running first, then clean up the wiring, get this cluster sorted out, and then get the AC put in place. There is also an amp, there's a headlight relay. So the headlights have to be that relay has to be rewired. And then what we can do is we can put this car back together. So the first thing is get this whole thing running properly, get it started, then get the headlight wiring and the relays running, and then put the AC back in, get that sorted, then put the car back together. But I think I'll just be able to get this started. Hopefully I can start this car. Here's the other end of the wiring. This here was all eaten up by rants, a little bit of it. So what I did was I spliced in some other wires and repaired it. You've got to do all the repairs, and hopefully this is plug and play. So this is what this end looks like, and this end creeps in from this side. You've got your headlights. I think this is a good way to identify locations. You've got the headlights, and that's something that's universal usually, with those H4 connectors. And then as you go, you can if you can figure out one of the sockets, you can figure out the rest. So if I figure out where this is, I know if this is going on this end, or over here. I'm actually guessing that this matches the fuse box over here. The fuse box will have to fit here, and this connector is probably, honestly not sure at the moment, but I will find the connector. I will find it. So this is 3-prong, and I'm guessing this may go into this. No, only 2. So yeah, I have to keep tracing the wiring, and I'll figure it out. We also pulled out the full wiring from the S-Team because we couldn't figure out how to do the fuel pump, and the easier thing is just lay the S-Team wiring into the Zen. So that's what we'll be doing today. Hopefully it'll start up. Fuel pump doesn't come on. So here we are back in the E-Zen. We managed to start it up. Basically, I didn't connect all the grounds. I didn't clean up the connectors, and I connected 1 or 2 things wrong. So I wasn't able to get things right, and it didn't start. It cranked up, but it just wouldn't get fuel to the fuel pump, and it wouldn't start up. So what I did was, my friend called an electrician, and he's got experience with these Zens and S-Teams, and he knew that, okay, this is what I got wrong. He connected the grounds, everything started working, and the car did fire up. What we did was we connected a battery for now so that the pump works, because this is still a carb Zen and the wiring remains carb. So the problem is that because the wiring remains carb, things don't work too well. So we have, this is why, the reason why I was telling you guys that you should start with a carb car and put a carb engine, or you use an MPFI car and convert it to a 1.6 MPFI, is because of the wiring. The wiring is a mess. It's not impossible, but it's quite a pain. And we have some difficulties like that I'll explain right now. So ideally, if you were going to take an MPFI engine, you would just shove the engine in, change the ECU or whatever, and maybe change a cluster too, not sure about that, but you'd be much better off, much better off. You just need one donor and it's easy. So you start with an MPFI car, swap the engine, done. But if you do this, you do a carb to MPFI, and you use the S-Team wiring, here's the problem. Basically, we have the cluster from the S-Team MPFI, and what we're going to have to do if we go ahead with this is we cut the surround of the S-Team dash and fit it onto the Zen. Then what we're going to have to do is splice the wiring from here and fit it to the Zen wiring. So now we'll have to see which way this car goes, and if we get the wiring for a reasonable sum, the MPFI Zen one, and we'll make it work that way. So I'll take you guys for a drive after we do that, and I hope to see you guys after this video in the next one. So thank you, like, share and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed the video. हाँ बंद करो